Hello and thank you for joining us on France 24. It's time for us to cast our collective eye on Africa. First up, the headlines. Fighting continues to rage in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, forcing hundreds of civilians to flee. This just one day after the presidents of the DRC and Rwanda signed a peace and economic accord in Washington, a deal which has had so far little effect on the ground. With the Ugandan presidential election campaign well underway, the UN denounces intensifying government crackdowns on members of the opposition and the press. The international organization urges for impartial investigations into reports of torture, arbitrary arrests, and disappearances. And we now know who will be facing whom in the Men's World Cup group stages after a highly anticipated draw in Washington. 9 African teams are confirmed to participate, while a 10th remains a possibility with the runoffs. We'll get into the details with sports consultant Karim Baldé. Thank you for joining us on the program. Fighting continued to rage on Friday in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, one day after the meeting between the leaders of the DRC and Rwanda in Washington. On Thursday, President Félix Tshisekedi met with President Paul Kagame to sign a peace and economic deal designed to end over 30 years of conflict in the east of the DRC. But on the sidelines, the US and Congo also agreed to a strategic partnership to give the US greater access to Congo's mining sector. Our correspondent in Kinshasa, Emmett Livingston, has the details.
The US and Congo have signed an agreement designed to usher American companies into Congo's massive mining sector. For decades, it's been Chinese companies that have dominated mining in Congo. The country's mineral wealth is a huge prize. Congo is the world's top producer of cobalt and the second largest producer of copper. It also abounds in other critical minerals, such as lithium, tin, and tantalum. On Thursday, according to the text of the new agreement, Congo agreed to prioritise US companies if they bid on certain new mining projects. Congo and the US will also set up a joint strategic minerals reserve designed to ensure a steady supply of minerals, such as cobalt, to the US. Kinshasa also committed to export large volumes of its minerals along a railway line that the US is heavily invested in. It's a coup for Washington, but Congolese critics are asking what their country gets in return. Now, what the Congolese government wants is help defeating M23 rebels in eastern Congo, who are backed by Rwanda. But so far, the US hasn't made any explicit security guarantees.
The Ugandan presidential election campaign is in full swing. With the vote set to be held for the 15th of January, 8 candidates, including President Yoweri Museveni and leading opposition figure Bobi Wine, are vying for the country's top job. However, on Wednesday, the United Nations decried an intensifying crackdown on the opposition, with the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, urging Ugandan authorities to end what he calls repressive tactics against them and the media. Our regional correspondent, Juliette Montilly, reports.
According to the UN, at least 550 members and ordinary supporters of the National Unity Platform, Bobi Wine's party, have been arrested in Uganda since the start of the year. Many remain behind bars, facing charges ranging from public disorder to obstruction of justice. This is significant also because most of them were detained during the election campaign, a fact the opposition, especially Bobi Wine himself, has been loudly denouncing for weeks now. And there's also the case, of course, of long-time opposition figure Kizza Besigye, detained since last year, accused of plotting against the government. Beyond these arrests, the UN reports alleged disappearances and torture, repeated violations of press freedom, along with the use of excessive force by security services. This comes after at least one person was killed during an opposition rally last week. These incidents have raised serious concerns of a possible repeat of the last presidential election in 2021. The UN reported at least 54 people were killed by security forces, and the Ugandan opposition denounced a vote marred by irregularities.
The Zimbabwean government is hoping to take advantage of the recent surge in gold prices. From the 1st of January 2026, Harare intends to implement a 10% royalty if prices exceed $2,500 per ounce, a bid to boost Zimbabwe's shares in the rally in bullion prices. However, gold producers have expressed concern on the new tax. Our correspondent, Sharon Mazingaizo, tells us more.
Zimbabwe is introducing a new tax on gold mining companies from 1 January 2026. The tax will range from 3% to 10% depending on the price of gold per ounce. If the price of gold exceeds more than $2,500 per ounce, the tax will be 10%. This will make it the most heavily taxed gold in the region. The international price of gold is currently exceeding $4,000 per ounce. Zimbabwe is struggling with low foreign currency reserves. Gold and tobacco are the main exports that bring foreign currency into the country, and the government is hoping that this new tax will boost state revenue. Gold miners are worried. They say that the new 10% tax is too high and it will reduce their profits. Gold is already bringing in 12% of Zimbabwe's GDP. Previously, large-scale miners paid a 5% tax.
The Men's World Cup draw 2026 has come and gone, and now we know which countries will be facing off in the group stages. 9 African countries are participating in this edition, maybe 10 depending on the runoff results, and everyone is excited about who ended up where. Among the highly anticipated matches, Ivory Coast against Germany in Group E, Senegal versus France in Group I, and Morocco versus Brazil in Group C. To talk about this more, I am joined by sports consultant Karim Balde. Karim, thank you so much for joining us on the program. So tell us, was this a tough or a good draw for the confirmed African teams?
Overall, I think it's a good draw because if you take Senegal, it's going to be tough for them with France and Norway. It could be tough for Morocco versus Brazil and Scotland, even if we have to tell our viewers that the first 2 teams of each groups and then best third of those groups will go further into the round 32. But for other teams, it's quite fair, to be honest. It's quite balanced, so it means that they will all have a chance to go further into the competition.
And Senegal versus France, Morocco versus Brazil are some of the highly anticipated matches, as I said before. Predictions, thoughts?
It's hard, but to start with Senegal, we all remember what happened in 2002. At that time, Les Bleus were the defending world champions, and they lost in the opening match of that World Cup versus Senegal. We all remember that goal from Papa Bouba Diop. So Senegal, the Lions of Teranga, would like to repeat that story in the US in next summer. But the main problem for Senegal that will face Norway as well with Erling Haaland, and we know he's a great striker, and we know that this Norway team is not only about Haaland. You also have other major players such as Martin Odegaard of Chelsea. And for Morocco, they lost versus Brazil in '98 at the World Cup in France, but they have a strong team. It will depend whether they will win the AFCON or not at home, because that could be like a massive game changer, in my opinion.
Exactly. And so the 2026 World Cup has expanded the number of teams. We may see 10 African nations compete. What opportunity could this represent for African football?
More teams means more chance to go far into the competition. We saw what happened with Morocco. They went up to the semi-final of the last World Cup in Qatar. But at least that's an opportunity for some small teams such as Cabo Verde, for example, even DR Congo. If they go into the World Cup, they will play the playoff in Mexico next March. That's an opportunity for them to be at the highest level in the world and to face opponents from other countries as well. That's why this World Cup, even if I'm not a huge fan of that 48 teams format, but at least it's an opportunity to see new matchups. And we have many, many new matchups throughout the groups of the competition. For example, Ivory Coast versus Curacao or Ecuador. This is new, so it's still gonna be interesting to look at.
And you were just saying Ivory Coast, who are the current title holders of the Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON. And they're going to be facing off not just against Ecuador and Curacao, but also Germany. How do you think they'll fare?
They're lucky to face Germany in 26 because we are used to see Germany at the highest level, eventually to win the World Cup. That was the case back in 20 for the edition in Brazil. We all remember it. And but since then, the German team has declined. Let's be fair, and their squad is not so big as it was in the past, in the noughties or in the year 2010. So I think this is the best moment maybe for Ivory Coast to face Germany. And then you have Curaçao and you come into the World Cup, the smallest country to be in that World Cup, even smaller than Cabo Verde. And then Ecuador. And Ecuador and Ivory Coast, these two teams have big and strong defense. Ivory Coast, 0 goal conceded into the qualifying campaign, and Ecuador is the team who conceded the less goals in South America.
And speaking of first-time participants, Cabo Verde is making its debut in the World Cup. They'll be facing off against Spain and Uruguay. That's quite a tough lineup for a maiden participation, no?
It's gonna be tough. Even Saudi Arabia, because we call them. It could be tough because their level is increasing in the last years. We saw what happened when they won against Argentina back in 2022. But yeah, for Cabo Verde, it's gonna be a whole new world. This World Cup. They managed to qualify in a group with Cameroon and Angola, two major African powerhouses. But we'll see what happened. It's going to be interesting to see their preparation because they're not part of the next AFCON in Morocco, so they're going to straight. That's the same for Ghana. They are going to go straight to the World Cup in North America. But they have a good team with decent players, a good striker, Livramento, and Bubishta, who was elected as the CAF Coach of the Year. So it means a lot to bring that tiny archipelago into the World Cup.
And, well, we've been talking about it all program. The World Cup's coming up this summer, but right around the corner in just less than 2 weeks or so, we've got the AFCON. Could the timing be a major game changer for the African teams and the players?
Yes, it could be a game changer in terms of coach because we saw since the end of the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers that there were many changes in Angola, for example, in Cameroon in recent days. So we know that could happen after the AFCON, especially for Morocco, as I said, because the pressure will be on Walid Regragui, the Atlas Lions head coach. They have to win at home. There is no other choice. They have to win at home. The whole country is waiting for more than 50 years, so they have to win it. Even if they go into the final and then they lost into the final, it's going to be a massive blowout for the whole country, for the Kingdom of Morocco. So that's why it could be a game changer. We'll see after the AFCON which coach will remain into their seats to lead their team into the World Cup.
And Karim, one final question. Which African players do you think will shine during this World Cup between Hakimi, Salah or Mane? Just to name a few.
If I have to pick up one, I will say Achraf Hakimi. He went back to training at Paris Saint-Germain yesterday, which is a good news for Morocco because we know that he was injured versus Bayern München in the UEFA Champions League matchup earlier in November. So that's a good news. He's going to be the African superstar for sure. He's everywhere on the streets in Morocco, on commercials as well. And he will be the main African players to follow at the World Cup because he's impressive both with PSG and is leading in a great way for the moment the Moroccan national team.
Well, thank you very much for your insight, Karim Balde, sports consultant. And that's all the time we have for now. Please stay tuned to France 24. We'll be right back with more news.